Guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Understanding Corvus Corax 40k lore, Ravenguard featuring the Warhammer community by the Amber King. Yes, created by the Amber King. I've been requested by ARYW to react to this video. So I'm here. And if you want to check out my previous reactions to the Amber King's Warhammer videos, remember the playlist card will be at the top. And if you want to check out the original video as well as the Amber King's YouTube channel, remember the links are in the description below. Yes, Corvus Corax. I only know just a bit about him, especially during the Understanding Conrad Curse video by the Amber King, and how Conrad would size himself up towards his brother. They kind of look similar, I think, with facial features and with their weapons that they have, and they both use the shadows, and they both have done terrible things to rule over their worlds, if I'm not mistaken. They both committed high numbers of deaths, to do it. It's just that in terms of Corvus, he is celebrated, while with Conrad, he is, shown with distaste and disgust and, with fear. So, yeah, that's the only thing that I really know about Corvus Corax. So, this is going to be a welcomed video for me to finally understand who this person is. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
I am vengeance incarnate. I am justice delivered. And I embrace my destiny. I will not let my suffering consume me. Nevermore.
Can I just say that I really like this soundtrack that the Amber King uses for his opening and closing of his videos. This soundtrack, I don't know where he got it from. I'm gonna have to search it up, but I really like it. I really enjoy listening to this soundtrack, especially because I've been watching most of his videos, and almost all of them that I've watched, they have this soundtrack, and it's just good. Really, it's just very good. I like it.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore.
I used to think that
I don't know what he's saying. I don't know what he's saying. I'm gonna have to watch this again, maybe twice, maybe for a third time, just to understand. But yeah, I'm sorry.
there was a righteous justice, that whatever I did, it served humanity. There is only one way left to aid mankind, and it does not include our survival. This is not our universe, and it never was. You cannot create legends and myths in a laboratory.
Oh, you cannot create legends and myths in a laboratory. Oh, is he talking to the Emperor when he said that? Hey, alright. I like that, actually. I like that.
The savior of deliverance, the Ravenlord, Corvus Corax, a man who ponders weak and weary, lost in the melancholy of a cruel universe, or vengeance incarnate, the Black Death to the traitors of the Imperium, the Primarch of the 19th, the Ravenguard. He's a figure of myth to a story told and retold thousands of times, a lord to a legion that stalks the enemies of the Imperium, waiting for the perfect moment to deliver the killing blow before melting back into the darkness once more.
So they are like assassins? They are not really like a frontal assault kind of legion. They don't attack from the front. They attack in not necessarily subterfuge, but misdirection, kind of like that. They're not like the Alpha Legion. Like the Alpha Legion, they use subterfuge and sabotage and all that stuff, but this Legion, they primarily target, or should I say, they attack with the intention to misdirect their enemy, to antagonize their enemy, using guerrilla tactics, if I can also say that. Alright.
But who is the Ravenlord? Who is Corvus Corax? How did he wage war? How did he think? How did he endure? His story begins in the 30th millennium. A child rested within a gestation capsule. Brief glints of a face were seen through the cracks of his eyelids. It felt like a dream, but everything changed as this capsule, deep in the earth of terror, was ripped out, torn into the tide of the reflective plane of madness, the warp. Claws scraped against the glass and metal. Creatures of sentient thought were trying to break in. The capsule was strung along these ocean tides until it suddenly burst back into real space, and a young boy emerged from the wreckage. It was cold. The capsule had crashed and sunk deep into the core of a world, the moon of Lycaeus, deep beneath a frozen glacier. The boy looked around himself, rationalizing and understanding his environment in a way that was beyond human. Where was he? He had no memory of how he was here. Who was he? Number 19. There was something he knew deep inside the core of his being. He was number 19. In a situation where any of us would be overtaken by fear and dread, he showed none of this, only simple confusion. Voices. The boy began to hear voices getting closer, and the sound of a high-pitched buzzing. Moments later, the small chamber the boy and his capsule wreckage occupied was broken into. Men and women in blue overalls, carrying strange machinery, peered into the chamber of near darkness and was stunned. A child with deathly pale white skin and midnight black eyes that would come to see more than most mortals could ever dream. These were the first humans the boy had ever seen. A voice called from behind them, screaming at them for stopping. A large man then stepped forward, wearing a different uniform and carrying a whip in his hand. His shouting stopped as he glanced at the strange child. It was impossible to find someone here. A small girl stepped out from the machinery, trying to peer at the commotion. The man with the whip told her to get back, snatching hold of the young girl's hair. The young boy did not like this man. He hated his unjust cruelty. He hated the noise of the girl screaming. We all remember that anger. It comes from witnessing cruel men bully others, especially someone who couldn't protect themselves. The boy lunged forward, slamming the vile man to the ground, and then pulling off his head, offering it to the small girl. She smiled as the humans in blue overalls began to panic. Her name was Euphemia Nasturi. She asked his name. He was 19. Number 19. A child had been discovered kilometers underground, packed around rock and ice. The blue uniformed humans were afraid, but also intrigued. Something was different about this child. His speed, his strength, the sheer aura of majesty that overtook them when they glimpsed him. He was special. He was a jewel found under ice and stone.
Okay, this is interesting. As I was hearing, as the Amber King explains how Corvus, or should I say number 19, I don't think he calls himself Corvus just yet, but number 19 was found in this ice. It's totally different from what happened with Konrad Curze. With Konrad Curze, as soon as he landed on Nostromo and he exited out his capsule, it was said, or should I say the Amber King said that, he was hungry. He was in survival mode almost immediately, and he needed nourishment. And his first victim was a human being that he consumed his brain matter and, everything else, I'm assuming. But, it's totally different from what's happening here with number 19. He didn't attack anyone, The people with the blue overalls, they came with their machines to, destroy the ice that's blocking them from number 19. And number 19 didn't attack. He didn't attack anyone. He wasn't hungry. He wasn't attacking out of his own, like purely out of self-defense or anything like that. He just stood there watching them. And, he only acted as soon as he saw this girl being whipped and, her hair being pulled by this larger man. So yeah, it's quite interesting how different they are. They're not the same. No way near the same in terms of Konrad Curze's beginnings as well as Corvus Corax's beginning. Because with Konrad, he consumed someone's brain matter, and then with Corvus, he just stood there. He was just watching things as they transpire, and only took action when he saw that something bad was happening here. Yeah, very interesting.
Something that had to be hidden from the men with whips. Terra, the epicenter of the emerging Imperium of mankind. It is the late 30th millennium, and a great host of warships, numbering in their thousands, are launching to the stars to reunite the lost colonies of mankind. The Great Crusade had begun. The Emperor, a figure of immense power, is seeking to bring humanity out of the horror of the age of strife, but he also seeks to find his sons, his Primarchs, scattered to the stars by creatures of sentient nightmare. Like how the Primarchs were sons to him, the Emperor created legions of warriors that were sons to them, the Legiones Astartes. It was the 19th, the Ravenguard, who were created with the meshing of tribal humans on Terra and the gene seed of an ashen-skinned, dark-eyed boy, whose location was thought to have been all but lost. The 19th Legion launched with the Great Crusade, absent of a Primarch, and quickly built a bloody reputation. Its warriors' capacity to switch from cold, impassive scrutiny to swift, brutal action soon made the Legion the subject of dread amongst those who would deny unity with the Imperium.
I think with all the legions, they all had the same type of modus operandi when it came to fighting against the enemies of the Imperium. They were all ruthless. They were all calculating cold-blooded killers. I think they were all like that until they met their Primarchs, and then that's when they started to develop their own type of identity, So before they met their Primarchs, they were all pretty much the same in terms of their reputation that's been created. Yeah.
They were brutal and efficient, but oppressive and uncaring. They were cut from the same cloth as the men with whips. the men that the young boy despised. Millions of miles away in Segmentum Tempestus, the strange boy had arrived alone on the moon of Lycaeus. He had landed on a prison world that orbited the world of Kievar. The humans in blue overalls were slaves, innocent or not. Thousands from the planet of Kievar had been cast to this brutal mining prison. Generations condemned to a lifetime of service in the cold and dark mines of this moon by its tyrannical ruling tech guilds. They were a malnourished, tortured people who faced cruelty and injustice daily. It was these people that found the strange child, buried deep amongst rock and ice. The prisoners of Lycaeus took him in. They saw that he was special and feared what would happen to him if enslaved by the prison overseers. They gave him shelter, they gave him sustenance, and they gave him love, and they gave him a name: Corvus Corax. The prisoners put their own lives at risk to keep him safe. They gave him their wisdom, as the boy received lessons on philosophy and politics. With their frozen fingers they sewed him clothes that didn't fit for long, as the boy began aging faster than any mortal man. He had friends, such as the small girl Euphronia Nasturi, and others, like the brothers Bran and Agapito Nev.
Wow, just wow. You know, I'm comparing with Konrad Curze. With Konrad Curze, he had no one. This man considered humans as his prey. He was in the shadows, you know, as a predator, watching his prey down below, living out their lives. And he just didn't value humanity or respect humanity like the way Corvus is beginning to respect and love humanity. You know, with Konrad, he saw us as cattle that need to be corralled and need to be controlled and need to be taught fear and to be devoured whenever it pleases him, you know, in his sense of justice. But then with Corvus, the people here, they loved him, they protected him, they clothed him. He had family, he had friends, you know. And you could say that both of the environments, Nostromo and Lycaeus, very tough conditions, very poor and difficult conditions. Worst yet, people here are slaves on this planet or on this moon. And you know, you would expect people who live in such conditions to be survival of the fittest as well, like what was happening on Nostromo. But that's not the case here. You know, the people here are protecting Corvus. They are loving Corvus. But then with Konrad Curze, he never really tried to open up that opportunity in just talking to people, you know, having a connection with people. I know Nostromo is filled with crime and it's a crime-ridden planet, but you know, there are still people out there who are vulnerable. There are still people out there who would be willing to help, who would be willing to befriend him, you know. But he never saw that. He never valued any of that. What he saw was his prey and people that he would have to control, you know, and have the sense of putting firmly his ideals of justice upon them. But with Corvus, it's totally different. Yeah. They are not the same. They are not the same. Very much not the same.
He had connections to ordinary people. Corax spent years in the dark and damp conditions in the subterranean prison. He was impressive, gifted with an innate fierce intelligence and imbued with a natural sense of justice that was tempered by his teachers, who understood the importance of teaching him humanity and patience. He was gifted in other ways too. When one night Under the tutelage of one of his teachers, a surprise inspection caught them off guard. Corax was almost found. As the guards peeked into his hiding spot, he was ready to fight, preparing to rip them apart. But when the guards looked directly at him, there was silence. They didn't see him. His will to hide had manifested physically. Corax had already made the shadows his home, but that night he became its master. He could make people not perceive him. Corax began to explore the prison.
Is that some sort of psychic ability that he has to manipulate people's perceptions, with their eyesight, so that they don't actually see that he's there, but he is there? I'm just wondering whether it's a psychic ability or is it some other form of physical ability that he's able to, bend darkness to his will or shadows to his will like that. I don't know. But that's quite interesting.
Growing and learning from the millions who suffered under this unjust, tyrannical rule. He was born with a complex understanding of science and technology, but he was complete by love. The people of Lycaeus' love. They gave him everything, and so now the young man, who for years had seen how his family had been mistreated, made a vow. He promised to free them. Corax planned for war.
This is also a very important thing right here. Corvus did not kill willy-nilly so far as I've seen right now. He hasn't killed anyone out of his own sense of justice. He hasn't tried to use fear as a weapon to control the people on this moon, unlike someone on Nostromo. Here the people continue to love him, continue to respect him, continue to give him support. But on Nostromo with Conrad Kurz, none of that, because he saw it his way and only his way, and that using painful tactics, painful, terrible, bloody tactics to control the people of Nostromo, to mold the society in his vision of peace and tranquility and justice.
Yes, you have brothers,
said the Emperor, smiling at his son's delight.
17 of them. You are the Primarchs, my finest creations.
17?
Corvus asked, confused.
I remember that I was number 19. How can that be so?
The Emperor's expression grew bleak, filled with deep sorrow. He looked away as he replied.
The other two,
he said.
That is a conversation for another day.
Where are my brothers now? Are they with you?
You and the other Primarchs were snatched from me by the strange powers of the warp, thrown across the galaxy on unnatural tides. That is how you came to rest beneath a glacier on this moon. Yes, I have seen what befell you, learning your life the moment I laid eyes upon you. The rumor of you, of a magnificent being who led a rebellion here, has traveled farther than you realize. And it was word of this that attracted my attention. Your brothers, those I have found, were similarly scattered to far-flung worlds. Like you, they are all great warriors and leaders. That was my gift to you. You are supreme commanders, with intellect and physical ability unmatched by anything in the mass of humanity. I engineered you from my own genetic structure to be my sons and my lieutenants in the Great Crusade.
What is this crusade? How many of my brothers have you found?
Most of them,
replied the Emperor.
I have vast armies, the Legiones Astartes. As you are crafted from me, so they are crafted from you. The Primarchs are the generals of those armies, leading humanity's reconquest of the galaxy. The long night, the age of strife, has ended. The remnants of the old empires smolder out in the darkness, the dying coals of humanity almost smothered by dark. The Great Crusade fans the flames into life, bringing with it reason to drive out superstition, enlightenment to replace barbarism. With your help, I will unite humanity and lead mankind to rule the stars.
There was so much to take in, but Corvus knew it to be true. Not only the words of the Emperor seemed certain, the idea of what he described messed with a much deeper feeling, knowing he was a Primarch, that he had been created to fight and to command, explained much that Corvus had never understood about himself, on a level that he understood in his spirit, and was encoded into every cell of his body. Corvus knew what he was.
I swear my loyalty to you,
said Corvus, sinking to one knee in front of the Emperor. He met the Emperor's gaze, and felt elation like no victory had given him before.
I am your son, your Primarch, and your will shall be my command.
That is good,
said the Emperor.
I have an army waiting for you. They are the Ravenguard, highly decorated and distinguished in my campaigns already. When you are ready, you will assume command of the Legion.
Am I not ready now?
Corvus said, having been elevated and then deflated by the Emperor's words.
Not yet, my son,
said the Emperor.
But soon you will emerge to join your brothers and take your place at my side, and at the head of the Ravenguard. First, though, tell me of Kiavar. What are your intentions?
To bring peace to both the world and its moon, and to heal the wounds of the past,
said Corvus.
With your help I will succeed.
Peace is the hardest goal to achieve. Victory, the cessation of war, the demilitarization of our opponents. These we can obtain with might of arms and perseverance. Peace, that is an altogether different beast.
Why would the Emperor say it that way? Does he not want to achieve peace? Should he not give his son confidence and support, in terms of him wanting to achieve peace? Why would the Emperor try to disparage that, or try to make him sway away from trying to achieve peace and just go through military action? That's very strange.
Corvus frowned, but nodded slowly. The Emperor sipped from his glass, his gaze unmoving.
Tell me again, then. Tell me of the wounds you and your followers inflicted upon this world, and of the peace you would bring to it with my help.
The boy had become a man, filled with an absolute hatred for the oppressor and cruel. Corax vowed to free the people who had cared for him. He felt for them. He truly cared. He began to plot. Using his gift of near invisibility, Corax explored far into the other complexes of the prison world, speaking to the people, the young and old, the innocent and guilty. Thousands were awestruck by the majesty of this demigod figure. You could imagine being in front of him, emotions of wonder that spilled forth, but yet also some fear too, as you realized he could crush you without effort. Corax created a network, links on a chain, bonded by unjust cruelty and oppression. Corax as a lone figure mastered the shadows, even hiding in plain sight in front of the cruel overseers. After years of patience, gathering intel, supplies, and willing recruits, they were ready, and Corax and his million-strong slave army rose up. The conflict was brutal. Many thousands gave their lives for freedom, young and old alike. No matter how long Corax lived, he would always be haunted by what he had asked of his people, even remembering a young 13-year-old girl who gave her life in a sabotage mission. Some never got the chance of freedom, poisoned by the overseers in an attempt to punish the rebels. Corax gave special treatment to those who delved to such depravity. The family that had raised the Primarch fought with him, side by side, until millions like Euphronia Nasturi, Bran, and Agapito Nev breathed their first free air. Lycaeus was free, and at the zenith of this victory a golden eagle stormbird descended from the sky. Golden light spilled out from its ramparts. The rebels murmured with wonder and cried tears of joy. Corax simply saw a normal man, until when the figure came close enough, he was hit by a wave of reverence. A golden warrior, so majestic, so perfect. Wisdom poured from the stranger's eyes. It was his father, the Emperor of mankind. The Emperor had come for his son, and the two spoke for hours, the awkwardness of strangers quickly fading. Corax had always been aware of his uniqueness. He had gifts and intellect that was beyond any mortal, but this also isolated him too. Even his friends looked at him with wonder. Now in the ashes of victory and freedom, he wasn't Corvus Corax to them, he was the savior. But the Emperor told him of his brothers, his equals, people who could truly understand him. He was elated, perhaps deep down relieved that there was a way to alleviate the loneliness that comes from leadership. The Emperor asked Corax his intentions, to bring peace to both the world and its moon, and to heal the wounds of the past. It was in a way naive. Peace is the hardest goal to achieve, and Corax needed to learn the truth about the hard road to peace. The Emperor left Corax to finish the war he had started, returning when he was ready.
Yes, the hard road to peace is hard. Nothing is ever easy. Nothing. It will take generations upon generations, but it is worthy of fighting for peace. Because if that peace is solidified, it will be there for all eternity, I believe. You know? Yes, people might consider, looking for peace as naivety, but, if that were the case, right? For instance, the country I live in South Africa, if we did not strive for peace between the different racial groups in our country, we would have been in civil war. We would have been fighting amongst each other. I would not probably be existing. This country would have been turned to ash. But people fought for peace. It was naive. There were people who wanted to continue fighting and have revenge against those who made us all suffer throughout apartheid, and we understand their pain. We understand their urge to want revenge, but it will not solve anything. So we fought for peace, and it's a work in progress. It's not something that will be completed in 10 years or 20 years. It's a lifetime, generational project. It's hard, but it's good work. Very good work.
Lycaeus was free and renamed to Deliverance, but the moon was still in danger from the tech guilds on the planet Kievar. The rebels were outnumbered, facing a superior force in technology and numbers. Even as the guild sought to launch a counterattack, Corax knew the terrible order he must give. Using the steep gravity well that tethered Kievar and its moon, the Primarch committed a full-scale atomic bombardment of the vast manufactorum cities below. Victory was achieved. Thousands died, but millions were saved. At least, that is how Corax justified it. Even as men, women and children burned on the surface, as each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. The first axiom of victory is to be other than where the enemy desires you to be. The first axiom of stealth is to be other than where the enemy believes you to be. The first axiom of freedom is that justice without force is powerless. Force without justice is tyranny. The war was over. Thousands lay dead because of the actions of Corax. He had learnt the lesson the Emperor had spoken of. Peace was the hardest thing to achieve. Corax now had to heal the wounds of the past, the hatred of the enslaved and the hatred of the previous enslavers. But this goal of the Saviour of Deliverance would have to be put on hold, as something greater required his blood, sweat and tears, the Great Crusade.
Oh no. Oh no. He's just like his father. He's impatient. He wants to jump off the ship and head over and fight in the wider galaxy for his father. Like how the father also, he left his responsibilities to his sons while he deals with the webway. You guys are immortal. I've said this before. You guys are immortal. You live forever. Why are you rushing? Why are you rushing? Stay home. Mend the wounds. Commit to reconciliation between the two celestial bodies, the main planet and the moon, of Lycaeus and Kivia. I can't pronounce the name, sorry guys. But yeah, that planet, yes. Try to mend the wounds between the two people. You live forever, meaning you'll be there watching over the generations upon generations of people who are born on the moon and the planet. And try to foster that unity, that peace. But it seems that, just like your father, you are rushing over to do other things instead of staying home and finishing your homework, the homework that you started. Okay.
With the liberation of Deliverance and the surrender of Kievar, the system was brought into the fold of the Imperium. Corax held true to the vows he gave that day he met his father. I am your son, your Primarch, and your will shall be my command. As a leader of a rebellion, Corax had no true experience of war.
Did all the new Primarchs head to Fulgrim for, further teaching? Did they all go to Fulgrim first? Because Conrad Kurz also went to Fulgrim for teaching, how to become a general or a Primarch. So yeah, I find it quite interesting. Maybe he was like the teacher of all the Primarchs, Yeah, something like that. Equivalent to a teacher.
Armies, supply lines, sieges, or logistics, and spent some time under the tutelage of the Emperor and his brother Rabute Gilliman, his Primarch brain absorbing the information in a way that he was able to add his own thoughts and perspective to it. Even spending time with his brother Fulgrim, before a boy who grew up in damp and claustrophobic conditions, he found no comfort in the lavish halls of the 3rd Legion. Opulence was too much of a reminder of his people's oppressors, and he was more at home in humble places. When he was ready, his father gifted him his sons, the 19th, the Ravenguard Legion, thousands of warriors created from his own genetic material. But when Corax met with his sons, he was not impressed. The 19th Legion had over a century of conflict under their belt, and had brought thousands of worlds into Imperial compliance, but the way they fought disgusted the Primarch, often using their tactics of infiltration to place themselves behind enemy lines to enact cruelty and to cut down retreating survivors. They had developed a culture of being cold-blooded killers, uncaring brutes who took joy in oppressing those that they saw as beneath them. Several of the Legion's high-ranking officers were displaced or reassigned to non-command roles, including Lord Arcus Fall, who had commanded the 19th for over 3 decades. Veterans who had fought since the early days by even Horus's side were banished, given autonomy to fight far from their Primarch.
Well, I am okay with that, you know. There's new man in charge, it's the Primarch, and the Primarch is not really pleased with your way of fighting. If you don't want to change, then, you know, you can just step aside. Just go there, you know, do your own thing, and then the rest of the Legion will be led by the Primarch. I like that. For some reason, I expected him to kill them. Yeah, but he let them go. He's allowing them to do as they please. So yeah, I'm okay with that.
Legion and Primarch reunited. The 19th could become a fully fledged member of the Great Crusade. But for this path, it needed more warriors. And who better than the warriors of Just Heart? The free people of Deliverance chose to follow their savior. Many of us understand what it is like to truly believe in someone and be willing to go to hell and back for them. In their thousands they joined. Many like Euphemia, the girl who had been with him since the start, joined the ranks of the crew and maintenance. And for many others, like Agapito and Bran, they gave themselves to something higher. As many of the young boys who gave their blood in the name of liberation joined the ranks of the Legiones Astartes. Corax's family followed him to war, to the stars, and Corax valued them, for they understood his values. The first axiom of freedom is that justice without force is powerless. Force without justice is tyranny. Corax wanted to wage a just war. He had to fight for something right, and he found that in the liberation for the slaves of Deliverance, and again he found it in the Imperial truth. The long night, the age of strife has ended. The remnants of the old empires smoulder out in the darkness, the dying coals of humanity almost smothered by the dark. The Great Crusade fans the flames into life, bringing with it reason to drive out superstition, enlightenment to replace barbarism. Corax, his family, and his legion headed to war. Take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder, and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy, and yet you act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there is some righteousness in which the universe may be judged. What is...
Yeah, I remember that from Understanding Conrad Curse. Okay, Amber King.
is just? Is one person's justice someone else's injustice? We are all the villain in someone else's story, and by whose code do we judge the righteousness of one's anger? Corax and the 19th casted themselves across the galaxy, blazing a trail from war zone to war zone, bringing worlds into Imperial compliance for the Great Crusade. Corax began moulding his legion on the principles and tactics he had learned upon Deliverance, to his Terran and Deliverance-born sons. The Ravenguard were masters of stealth, embracing covert tactics over brute force. To the thousands of hostile Xenos and non-compliant worlds, they would find their defeat planned with a masterful stroke. Superhuman-sized warriors would emerge from the shadows in lightning-fast raids, led by a figure that could be barely glimpsed by the human eye. Corax's personal combat prowess was staggering. Armed with his lightning claws, he was the Raven, an omen of death, as none could match his speed, combined with his ability to mask his presence. Numbering amongst the greatest duelists in the Imperium, even amongst his brothers, the Legion and the Primarch fought non-stop for decades. Where they could, Corax and the Legion minimized civilian casualties as much as possible. The tactics reflected the man perfectly, but not all saw its wisdom. Horus, the first found son, loved by all, had tension with the Ravenlord. The Battle of Gate 42 was forever in the conscience of Corax, as a newly appointed War Master Horus was eager to show results following his ascension. Horus utilized the Ravenguard in a frontal assault, whilst the other ally legions finished off the enemy. It was counter to the Legion's ethos and tactics, and many of Corax's sons died because of Horus's vanity.
You know, you would assume that Horus understands the strengths of the 19th Legion. Why would he use them this way? Why would he put them in the front of battle when that's not their strong point? That's strange. And I'm sure he didn't even give a proper excuse or reason why he did that to Corvus. Yeah.
Seeing people used as tools, cruelly wasting life, perhaps Corax saw a hint at the behaviour he despised from the tyrannical tech guilds of his homeworld. He swore never to fight besides Horus ever again.
You know, I think the Primarchs love their own legions more than they would love all the other legions as well. So, you know, to Corvus, yes, these are his sons, but to Horus, they are just soldiers, you know, that are going to be used on the front lines. He doesn't value them as much as Corvus does. So yeah, it varies between Primarchs, you know. Yeah.
But for all the Ravenlord's noble qualities, there is a darkness to his light. Down in the prisons of Deliverance, the boy was raised by people who were oppressed. Many people whose crime had been having a different opinion. People who were destitute. And people who were just born there. They were angry. They wanted justice. But many wanted vengeance. Corax's genuine desire for justice was always followed by the shadow of vengeance. It burned him when the guilty avoided the justice he thought they deserved. His sons, Agapito and Brand, loved their savior, their Primarch, but were cowed when Corax's anger overtook his strategic mind. Over the Great Crusade, many Ravenguard would be the cost of this weakness. This thin line between justice and vengeance scared him, because of the grisly reminder of his dark potential, his dark mirror, the Night Haunter, his brother, Conrad Kurz. Conrad echoed his brother in ways that terrified Corax. Their skin shared death's pallor. Their eyes were sinister orbs of ink. They were both guided by a sense of justice, but one a liberator and the other a torturer. Both dominated the shadows, calling them home. Conrad was a reminder to Corax what he could have easily been without the love shown to him as a boy, and also what he could still be when his inner monster was unleashed. For all of us, it is our light that most frightens us. We fear standing out. We fear taking the steps to be the best versions of ourselves, but it was his dark that most frightened the Raven.
Yeah, I'm still standing behind my point on this matter that, Conrad had choices. He had choices when he was on Nostromo to become a different person. He had a choice. He could have easily decided not to do the things that he did to the people there. He could have found a different path, a different way of dispensing his justice that didn't require to use tactics of fear, And I think Corvus should also just, don't obsess over that you might become like your opposite other. You might become like Conrad Curse. Don't think about that too much. Even if you do fall into your own darkness, I don't think you're going to end up like him. I don't think you're going to be doing the same things that he's been doing. Like the Amber King said that, he had family. He had people who loved him. He had people who respect him, And those are anchors that will keep him steady through his tough times. Conrad Curse doesn't have any of that. It's just him. It's just him doing what he wants, how he wants, and he justifies it by saying this is his form of justice. So yeah.
Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch this again.
Lorgar's grey eyes danced with the light, despite the strain on his body. The opposite of chaos is not order, brother. It is stasis. Lifeless, unchanging stasis. With a last grunt, Lorgar's strength gave. Quivering hands could no longer keep his brother's weapons back.
Here it is,
Corax promised in a hiss, his saliva flecking Lorgar's eyes and cheeks.
Here is the death you so richly deserve.
The claws reached his brother's face. Slowly, the metal burning hot, they sliced over Lorgar's golden skin, inch by inch, blackening the golden flesh, cutting into the meat of his cheeks. Even should he escape, he would bear these scars until the day he died. He knew this, and did not care. The psychic fire wreathing them both flared in response to Lorgar's pain. Corax closed his eyes to spare his sight, and instinct cost him his quick victory. Lorgar threw the Ravenlord back again. The Luminarum rose, ready to strike, before a burst of smoky fire launched the Ravenlord up from the soil, to come down on Lorgar from above. The Wordbearer smashed the first claw aside, striking the fist with enough force to shatter the gauntlet completely. But even as the scythe-long claw blade span off into the surrounding melee, the second claw struck home. Meter-long talons sank through Lorgar's stomach, the tips glinting to the side of his spine as they thrust from his back. Such a blow meant little to a Primarch. Only when Corax heaved upwards did Lorgar stagger.
It means little to a Primarch being stabbed like that in the stomach. Oh wow, yo. I know you guys can heal and everything, but this is just... Oh.
The claws bit and cut, soaring through the word-bearer's body. Luminarum slipped from the impaled Primarch's fists. Those same hands wrapped around Corax's throat, even as the Ravenlord was carving his brother in half.
For the Emperor,
Corax breathed, untroubled by his weaker brother's grip. Lorgar crashed his forehead against Corax's face, shattering his brother's nose, but still he could not free himself. The Ravenlord gave no ground, even as a second, third, and fourth headbutt decimated his delicate features.
But he lied to us.
Lorgar spoke through lips that produced more blood than language. The claws jerked, snagged against Lorgar's enhanced bones. Corax tore them free, inflicting more damage than the first impaling had done. Blood hissed and popped as it evaporated on the force-fielded blades.
Father lied,
Lorgar said again. He was on his knees, hands clutched over the ruination of his stomach. Corax's black eyes gave nothing away. He stepped closer, his one functioning claw raised to execute his brother.
Do it,
Lorgar snarled. The psychic wind, the misty fire, all were gone now. He was as he'd always been, Lorgar, the 17th son, the image of his father, the one soul in 20 who never wished to be a soldier. And here he would die, at the heart of the battlefield.
Wait, so Lorgar has the image of his father? He looks like his father. Okay, he looks like the Emperor. Huh. Yeah, I can see it. All he needs now is the hair. That, you know, flowing black long hair that the Emperor has. And then, yeah, I can see it.
Foul irony of the moment settled on his shoulders, feeling grotesquely apt. He couldn't move his legs. His body was a temple to nothing but pain. He could...
And he's still alive. He's still alive. Ugh.
Barely even see his executioner, for his psychic efforts had left him quivering with both weakness and a vision-blurring ache in his mind. A faint outline met his gaze, the blurred image of scythe blades raised high.
Do it!
Lorgar screamed at his brother. The claw fell and struck opposing metal. Corax looked to meet eyes as black as his, in a face as pale as his own. His claw strained against a mirroring weapon, both sets of blades scraping as they ground against each other, one claw seeking to fall and kill, the other unyielding in its rising defense. Where the Ravenguard's Primarch's features were fierce with effort, the other face wore a grin. It was a smile, both taunt and mirthless, a dead man's smile. Once his lips surrendered to rigor mortis.
Corax,
said the other Primarch.
Curse.
Corax said the name as the curse it was.
Look into my eyes and see your death,
said the progenitor of the Night Lord's Legion. Horus had betrayed the Emperor. He had betrayed them all, and with him 3 more legions had risen their flags of treachery. It was unthinkable. Corax had no love for Horus, but he respected him. He was the best of them. The Ravenguard, Iron Hands and Salamander legions were dispatched to the Istvaan system.
What made Horus Lupercal the best amongst them all, amongst all the Primarchs? What made him the best? Because, you know, we've been told, or should I say I've been told that, you know, the greatest hand-to-hand or, you know, melee combat Primarchs like Conroy Kurz, were the best at what they did, and others were very astute commanders in terms of organization, like what's his name again? The blue guy, Rabute Gilliman, or the Primarch of the Imperial Fists. They were best at organizing, and then you had Primarchs that were best at melee fighting. So what was Horus really best at? I'm not entirely sure. What made him so likable to everybody, and everybody respecting his form of leadership? Was it because he could speak, he could galvanize his brothers in a certain way that none of the other brothers could do? I'm still trying to figure out what made him so special compared to all the other brothers. Yeah.
Bring the traitors to heel. It was legionary against legionary, Primarch versus Primarch. The battle began. A symphony of violence so overwhelming it was like the very universe was ending. The greatest soldiers of humanity fought tooth and nail, surrounded by explosions and fire the size of titans. Warriors clashed, drowning in the mix of mud and blood. Corax and his Ravenguard attacked the traitors' flank, each side suffering heavy casualties. The first wave had struck the traitors in their entrenched position, and now prepared for a retreat to cycle in their reinforcements. The Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Alpha Legion and Wordbearers stood upon the hill to their rear, and as the Ravenguard approached, dragging their wounded and dead behind them, they voxed their brothers, glad to see them. But an eerie silence fell between them. Something was wrong. A lone flare shot skyward, exploding in a hellish red glow, and the 4 legions fired. Corax had seen numerous, untold atrocities in the name of enlightenment, even himself being a part of conflicts he was not proud of. But for the first time in his life, Corax cried. The Ravenguard fell in their thousands, as the Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Alpha Legion, and Wordbearers unleashed their volley. They were surrounded. Corax leapt from each pocket of the conflict, fighting like a warrior possessed. The Ravenlord flew at the traitorous Astartes, trying to buy space and time for his sons. Thousands fell to his lightning claws until he saw him.
I'm just trying to imagine that kind of fight, because the Astartes and the Primarchs, they're wearing these big clunky armor and everything, and it's just, it would be so weird. I don't know, like in my head, right, I'm just imagining them all fighting. It'll just be a mess. Really, it's just a mess. Yeah, I don't know. I think I need to watch a video or a movie, showing how Astartes would be fighting amongst each other. I need to see something like that. Then maybe I'll have a proper understanding on how would it unfold, in the Civil War. But really, it's very difficult for me to try and imagine these men in these big clunky armors fighting against each other, and the Primarch Corvus using his lightning blades and swifting and killing as many of the traitors as possible. It's very hard for me to imagine that.
Lorgar. Corax on his metallic raven wings thrust himself at his brother, who was now wreathed in a dark psychic energy. The Primarchs clashed, Lorgar screaming over the sounds of ceramite clashing, justifying his actions. Corax didn't understand. Why? Why were they doing this? What madness has taken you all? Corax overpowered his brother, impaling him on his claw. His anger boiled over, but before vengeance could be his, an opposing claw matched him.
I'm just surprised that, the Astartes are not coming towards the defense of their Primarchs. Like the Primarch of the Word Bearers. He's being impaled by Corvus, right? Where are the Word Bearers? Why aren't they protecting their Primarch? Why aren't they shooting at Corvus all this time? Or are they just, making a circle and just watching them fight against each other? Yeah, I'm just wondering about that.
Eyes as black as midnight stared back. Curse, the Night Haunter. Corax had Lorgar mortally wounded, but could he take them both? The Ravenlord made a choice and retreated, using his jet booster to launch himself back towards his sons, a decision that would come to haunt him. The Ravenguard was surrounded. For weeks they were being picked off. The 80,000 strong legion were massacred to a few thousand, scavenging ammo and armor from the dead. They were chased onto a mountain by Angron and his World Eaters. Corax and his sons preparing to make their last stand, when in their most dire moment, a single cruiser dived into the atmosphere. Bran, captain of the Avenger, had penetrated deep into enemy lines and gunned down to the surface to rescue his legion. Corax and the last 1,000 Ravenguard hauled themselves to safety. The Ravenlord and the legion were bloodied. Thousands of their friends and brothers lay dead. Each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor of Istvaan 5. They were betrayed. The legion was in ruin. Thousands of the children of terror and deliverance were gone. The soldiers who had put their trust in the Saviour were gone. Corax was a broken, wounded thing as he pondered weak and weary about the hell he had just survived. He knew he had to think of the Legion, the Imperium, his father. Corax set the Avengers' course for Terra.
I just have to say it's quite cool what was his name? Brandon? I think his name was Brandon. How he used his ship, descending into the planet's atmosphere and landing so that he could collect the Ravenguard 19th Legion and as well as the Primarch, saving their lives from the Istvaan 5 catastrophe or betrayal, That's quite cool. It kind of reminds me of Battlestar Galactica for some reason. I think it was season 3 or 4? No, it was season 3. Yeah, of Battlestar Galactica. When the Galactica jumped into New Caprica and, they were launching their Vipers to defend the airspace from the Cylons. It just kind of gave me that impression about it as well. So yeah, it's quite cool. It's quite cool. I like it.
The Emperor's eyes were open, glittering orbs of gold that bored into Corax's soul. Motes of golden energy danced in those orbs, but their look was not without kindness. The Emperor stood, his armor melting away into wisps of golden thread, to be replaced by robes of flowing silver that had...
He can do that? The armor can just peel off and then he's just with new clothing? Like, what kind of psychic ability is that? Or psychic ability is that? Oh man, that's cool.
Cascaded from his body like an argent waterfall. The Emperor stood, seeming diminished in size but not presence by the removal of his armor, forming insubstantial steps that allowed the Emperor to descend as effortlessly as a normal man walks down a flight of stairs. The Emperor reached out a hand, and Corax felt hot fingers upon his brow. Energy flowed through the Primarch, knitting his shattered bones, stemming his pouring blood, healing wounded muscles and organs. The Primarch gasped, filled with love and adoration.
Stand.
Corax did as the Emperor commanded, his strength restored.
I am sorry, Father,
said Corax, dropping to his knees once more.
I know that your labors are important, but I have to speak with you.
Of course you do, Corvus,
said the Emperor. The majesty and power had gone from his voice, leaving only a tone of respect and admiration.
You have endured much to come here.
Corax felt a hand on his arm, and he straightened under the Emperor's guidance. His father appeared less majestic, the light dimming beneath his skin, his face taking on the features of a normal man with brown eyes, while long, dark hair flowed from his scalp.
Is this your true face?
Asked Corax.
I have no such thing,
replied the Emperor.
I have worn 1,000,000 faces over the millennia.
So what do you look like exactly then? What's the real you? Are we sure this guy is human, guys? No. Are we sure that he's human? I'm beginning to suspect that he's some sort of alien, that proclaims itself to be human. Yeah. I mean, really, we don't even know what you look like then. If this is not your true face, if Logar, because we've been told that Logar looks like the Emperor, he has the likings of the Emperor. And now the Emperor is telling us, no, this is not the real me. I've worn many faces throughout the eons. Then what do you really look like?
According to need or whim.
I remember this one,
said Corax, dimly recalling a dream he had glimpsed when in the glory of battle.
You wish to sacrifice your legion?
The Emperor seemed genuinely surprised.
In what cause?
I do not do it out of woe, but necessity,
explained Corax.
I must atone for the failure at Istvaan, for it will tear me apart as surely as my wounds did, if allowed to fester in my heart. Forgive me, but I cannot defend Terra, idly awaiting my fate to come to me.
The Emperor did not reply for some time, his brow creased slightly with deep thought. Corax waited patiently, eyes fixed to the Emperor's face.
I concur,
the Master of Mankind said eventually.
It is in your nature to cry havoc and wreak the same upon your foes. Yet there is no need for sacrifice. I am reluctant, but you have my trust, Corvus. I will grant you a gift, a very precious gift.
Once more the Emperor reached out his hand and laid it upon Corax's head. For an eternity, Corax was overwhelmed by the mind of the Emperor. An existence that had spanned more than 30 millennia tried to crowd into the Primarch's thoughts, sending pain searing through him. In a moment the pain had ceased, the imprint upon his memories a shard of what had come before, the tiniest fraction of the Emperor's being. Still reeling from the psychic onslaught, Corax wondered if this was how the Astropaths felt during the soul binding, their minds conjoined with the psychic might of the Emperor. Flashes of new memories coursed through his thoughts, blocking out all other sensation. A succession of images burned into his psyche. Corax realized his eyes were closed, and opened them. The Emperor was watching him, waiting patiently for his son to explore the gift he had given him.
You have given me the secrets of the Primarch project,
said Corax. His voice was a whisper of amazement.
The parts that were relevant to the creation of the legions, yes, said
the Emperor. He did not.
I thought maybe the Emperor was going to tell him, you know what, go and create more Primarchs. Go create more Primarchs for me. But then no, the Emperor's like, no, I gave you specific parts where, you would create Astartes. All right. I was going to be so surprised right there. I mean, if the Emperor just told Corvax, you know what, I'm going to give you information to create new Primarchs, I would have been shocked.
Smile.
I must return to the webway. My absence will be sorely missed. That is all the help I can offer you.
Corax was broken, both spiritually and physically. He and his sons were shaken by the apocalyptic battle they had just endured. For 98 days they had been hunted by bloodthirsty warriors, but they were not safe yet. It was a nerve-wracking escape for the crew and the survivors aboard the cruiser, the Avenger. Utilizing the Legion's unique reflex shield technology from Kievar, they were near invisible and meandered through the traitorous fleet's blind fire for days, unnerved by the possibility of a lucky shot. Corax sat at the command throne, never resting, vigilant for any course changes or updates. It was upon his lonely throne the Primarch began to ponder. He was filled with regret. Perhaps he should have faced Kurz, Lorgar, and even Angron. It would have cost him his life, but wasn't that worth it? To deny the traitors valuable leadership in the war? Wouldn't that save millions? When he had liberated his home, he had dropped atomic bombs on the planet Kievar. He killed thousands, but he ended the war, saving millions. A deep melancholy cast its shadow over Corvus Corax. He was a Primarch with a superhuman frame, but he willed his wounds not to heal, punishing himself for his perceived failures. He told his sons, "We have no room for hope. We plan and we act. Hope is for dreamers and poets. We have our will and our weapons, and we shall dictate our own fate." Bold words, but devoid of the spirit he had inherited from the people who had raised him. Corax and the surviving Ravenguard made their way to Terra through...
What the Amber King says is correct, because, the slaves, or the former slaves on the planet Deliverance, which used to be called Lycaeus, they had hope. They put hope in Corvus Corax, into changing their lives forever. They had hope in his leadership. They had hope in his strength and ability to break their chains and to become free. And now that he is saying that we should not depend on hope, there's no such thing as hope, we should only depend on our weapons and our own knowledge to change our fates, to command our fates. It just sounds a bit weird, because this guy was a freedom fighter, and freedom fighters also depend on hope. They also create hope. So yeah, it's a bit weird to hear him say that.
Ever-increasing violent warp storms, and after a grueling journey, they made it to the Sol system. They were met with suspicion, but finally Corax made it to the surface, greeted by Malkador the Sigillite and his brother Rogel Dawn. He demanded to speak with his father, only to be rebuffed. He argued with Dawn and Malkador, telling them that they could not stop him, but they were silenced. A presence entered the Primarch's mind. Corax saw a vision of the Emperor straining with concentration upon a throne of gold, until he opened his eyes. The golden light enveloped the Ravenlord. You can imagine how it feels to stand before the full power of the Emperor, like staring directly into the heart of a nuclear reactor, a roaring mass of unbridled power, but combined with an overwhelming sense of majesty and love.
Has the Amber King actually seen a nuclear reactor? I've seen one, on YouTube, of course. I don't know if that's like the right metaphor to use. I mean, the nuclear reactor, the one that I've seen, it's in a pool of water, like a lot of water, and it's like rods, the nuclear fuel rods. Yeah, it's like, I don't know how many of them are there. It's in a collection, and it's all the way down in the pool of water. And yeah, it lights up, but it's not really something that you would try to make as an example of how the Emperor and his presence is, towards, or should I say, in front of his sons or in front of anyone else. I don't know. Maybe he should have said something like the sun, a shining, a light that is warm, that gives off warmth, that is blinding, if I can say it like that. But a nuclear reactor, I don't know. I honestly don't know if that's the right one to use as a metaphor. But okay, it's okay.
The Emperor healed his son. He filled Corax with hope and purpose again. Corax wanted to rebuild his legion. He wanted to atone for his failure at Istvaan. He wanted to fight back, and his father granted him his wish. He granted him the secrets of the Primarch project. He gave him a mental key to the secret gene laboratories deep in Terra. It was a secret Corax had promised to guard with his life, the Emperor making him swear to destroy even his own sons in its protection.
Okay, so I just realized something. When the Emperor was talking with Corvus, like when his armor was peeling off and then he only had this robe, when he was wearing his robe, that was in the mind. Like, the Emperor was talking to Corvus in his mind. He wasn't physically there. Like, the armor wasn't there. I mean, like, he wasn't there and then the armor just peels off and then, he's just left with these robes. Because if that was happening, that's why I was questioning, like, what kind of power does this man have that he's able just to peel off his armor and then be left with a robe and then, he's just like that. I mean, that's amazing. That would be a powerful ability to switch over your clothing just like that. But now I understand that actually it's in his mind, The Emperor is in his mind. He's discussing with him in his mind. It's a mental communication like that. Okay. Yeah. Oh.
The Ravenguard were not designed to fight behind walls. Their tactics of stealth and hit and run were where they excelled. With this gift, Corax could rebuild the Legion and harass the traitors behind their lines, and also prove to the various worlds of the Imperium that Horus was not invincible, and that the Imperium was worth fighting for. Corax was grateful. He asked the Emperor why does he not sail from Terra to deal with the traitors directly. It was then that the Emperor revealed that this war was about more than Horus, that the true enemy came from the warp, and the future of the species was at stake. Demons. Demons were the true enemy, and the Emperor was fighting them as they spoke. Fighting them within the Eldar's webway tunnels located deep below Terra. This required unparalleled concentration, so the Emperor was locked upon his golden throne. This was a war unlike any humanity had ever faced. For Corvus Corax, the Horus Heresy had truly begun. Chaos, the warp, the true enemy. Upon the apocalyptic fields of Istvaan V, Corax and the Ravenguard caught their first glimpse of the influence of this true enemy. The Galvorbak, Lorgar's blessed sons, were the first to dive into the Ravenguard lines when the betrayal was revealed. They were transformed, their bodies enlarged, spikes of bone, jutting hooves and knotted muscle burst from their armor. They were like ravenous beasts that took moments of pleasure drinking the blood of the fallen Astartes. This strange influence wreathed Lorgar during the Primarch's clash, and now his father, the Emperor, was fighting it inside the webway located below Terra. It was the Emperor's secret project, utilizing the Eldar's webway tunnels instead of the warp. But this chaos had broken into the webway itself, forcing the Emperor to use all of his psychic might to protect Terra's gates, lest demons overrun it. Corax couldn't understand. Why had his brothers allied themselves with entities of the warp? Why did they betray the Emperor and the Imperium? This blindness was something that many, such as his family, Bran, Euphrenia, Agapito, and many other ordinary humans who fought with the Ravenlord had come to see. He did not understand that truth was subjective, not an absolute. Take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and show me one atom.
The Ember King loves this. He loves this saying, he really does.
Of justice, one molecule of mercy. Justice was a construct of a subjective experience. It was a Primarch's weakness. Corax believed so completely in the Imperium and the Imperial truth that it shocked him when others didn't feel the same as him. It was the wisest choice. It was the best choice for the species, and yet many over centuries had refused compliance. His naivety in understanding that some people are just looking out for themselves was a human weakness. Corax, Bran, Agapito, and the now elderly Euphemia were with him, aboard the Avenger, the Gene Seed project.
Euphemia, the girl who's been with him for so long, like since the very beginning, you know, when he was down in that ice chasm, and then, you know, he was freed and she was there, you know, and he helped her by killing that slaver who had the whip. That girl has been with him for a very long time, and now she's an elderly lady. Wow, I just wonder how old is she? Is she still going to be with him, you know, towards the end of the Civil War and even after that? I'm just wondering. But that's so sweet. You know, he still has his family from, what did they call the planet again? Deliverance. Yes, that's so sweet.
In tow, and his surviving Ravenguard and a contingent of Custodes set course for Deliverance and Kievar. They were heading home. This resurgence was desperately needed by Corax. There was a part of him that was damaged since Istvaan, though perhaps it had always been a part of him. This melancholy that many of us have had the misfortune of experiencing, the feeling of being tired with the world, a mind fog that cannot be easily shaken, preventing any moments of joy or happiness. On rare occasions throughout the Great Crusade, an unlucky legionary of the Ravenguard would find an overwhelming depressive state would envelop him. His hair would darken, his skin would pale. Something within would meld stronger with the gene seed of Corax. Only death or fierce constant battle were the only options for release. It was this part of himself that Corax feared the most. The part he had told his father he was most afraid of. The part which could turn him more into his dark counterpart. Curse. The Gene Seed Bank gift was more important than Corax would ever realize. Arriving back into their home system, the Legion reunited with the garrison upon Deliverance. Only 4,000 Ravenguard existed in the galaxy, but that number was going to change. Arduously extracting the specific gene seed from the Gene Seed Bank, Corax could create legionaries with the maturity rate of a Primarch. Decades could be shortened to months. The experiments continued for weeks inside the training fortress, the Ravendel.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing, you know, to have the gene seeds, you know, accelerate the growth of these aspirant Astartes at the speed of a Primarch. I mean, isn't that a bit dangerous? Aren't you going to create like corrupted Astartes that way or something? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's hear what happens.
500 aspirants underwent the new process, combining with the gene seed of Corax, and the results were incredible. Fully fledged Legiones Astartes emerged in a matter of weeks. Though lacking true combat experience, they were the future, the salvation of the Legion, and
okay, so far so good. So far so good.
Corax's mind. The process for 2,000 more began, but it was not salvation, but disaster that lay upon the horizon. The escape from the bloody fields of Istvaan was a miracle. Bran and Euphemia aboard the Avenger bursting through a gap in the enemy lines. It was almost too good to be true. The fact that the Avenger should have been garrisoned back upon Deliverance had not escaped the Primarch's mind. Commander Bran knew the Primarch would not take well to the truth, that dream visions had been the source of his rescue. Corax's melancholy was obvious to one who had known him his whole life. Upon returning, the Primarch had even murdered a word-bearer captain who had been with the Legion for decades upon Deliverance following the Edict of Nicaea. Corax told his sons he could smell the taint on him. This melancholy seems to lift with the success of the first 500 new Astartes, donned the Raptors, but all went to disaster with the next batch of 2,000. Corax's suspicion of Istvaan had been well placed. Alpha Legion Astartes, upon the killing fields of Istvaan, had infiltrated the survivors of the massacre, grafting the skin of the Ravenguard's fallen comrades onto their own.
Damn. Man, this Alpha Legion is good though. It's good. No. Like, what they're doing here is terrible, but wow.
These hidden agents struck in tandem with a rebellion exploding upon Kievar. Corax's words, to bring peace to both the world and its moon, and to heal the wounds of the past. It was the words he gave to the Emperor when they first met, but the wounds upon Kievar and its previous Tech Guild masters had not healed.
Exactly. This is what I was worried about. This is exactly what I was worried about. That's why I'm saying you guys are immortal. You have all the time in the universe. Take your time. Don't rush things. Stay home. Finish your homework. Once you've done your homework and it's complete, then you can go. But he didn't do it. Now look what's happened.
They had festered. Another failure that struck at the heart of Corax. The disguised Alpha Legion operatives tainted the Gene Seed Bank, and the results were disastrous. The new 2,000 recruits began to devolve and mutate. Young Astartes, recruits from Deliverance, gave themselves to their home's savior and followed their ancestors into service, joining the legendary Ravenguard Legion. Men like Navar Hef were excited to become superhuman warriors in the service to the Imperium. Both spikes of bone, scales, feathers, and other mutations began to manifest. They were monsters. Some were so devolved that they had to be locked up. If this disaster was not enough for the distraught Primarch, a force comprising of the rebellious Tech Guilds attacked the Legion. Corax once again went to battle with the very people who had enslaved his family. The fighting was furious. Corax leaping from zone to zone, crushing the enemy, but it was a bluff. The Alpha Legion's true goal was elsewhere. The Tech Guilds were just a distraction. The Raven Delve, the Gene Seed Bank, was left exposed. Corax was furious. He intended to go to the Raven Delve himself, but Bran begged him not to, saying that he was prepared to destroy the Raven Delve to prevent the Guilders from gaining the Gene Seed, but he could not whilst his Primarch was inside. Corax's son stood up to him. He saw in a reflection his face contorted with anger and hate. He looked like Curse. His chance to rebuild the Legion was gone. His chance for vengeance against Lorgar and his treacherous brothers was gone. His escape from melancholy was gone. But Bran's words tempered him, tempered his lust for vengeance. Corax trusted the mission to his sons, and they all rose to the occasion. Navar Hef and the other mutated recruits locked below the Raven Delve heard the fighting and burst from their quarters and fought off the Alpha Legion operatives, throwing themselves at them without armor or weapons, using their fists, claws, and sheer will to liberate the stronghold. The Ravenguard won, but their hopes of rebuilding was lost. But this war was not over. Corax stood before the 4,000 last Ravenguard. Even his mutated sons stood in their midnight armor. They could still fight, still show the colonies of the Imperium that they were not abandoned to Horus. The sons of Deliverance brightened their father's darkening heart, and Corax vowed to destroy every warp-tainted creature in the galaxy.
Every warp-tainted creature in the galaxy. He does realize that the Emperor is also a warp. Well, I don't know. I can't say tainted, but he is of the, of the warp. He's a warp creature as well, and some of the Primarchs also use the warp, and I guess you could also say that, all of the Primarchs have also been imbued with warp energy and abilities. So, yeah, maybe it just means demons. Maybe it just means demons and people who have been corrupted by the chaos demons. Yeah. Because he's kind of generalizing, and he's kind of, putting a blanket statement over everybody now. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
We have been touched by forces beyond the Emperor's own design. You know this, brother, as well as I do. No good comes from that which in evil is born, no matter the purpose or cause. I look at Kurz and see myself. How could the Emperor create such demigods with science alone? Warriors that can withstand tank shells, leaders whose every word must be obeyed, creatures with powers far beyond any Thunder Warrior or Legionary. Why do you think the Emperor decided not to simply recreate his children when they were lost? What unique gifts of darkness did he pass to you? I used to think there was righteous justice.
He continued, his gaze moving from Russ to the warriors at the doorway.
That whatever I did, it served humanity. There is only one way left to aid mankind, and it does not include our survival, O King of Wolves. This is not our universe, and it never was. You cannot create legends and myths in a laboratory.
Other faces were in his
Oh, okay, so he told Leman Russ this, he didn't tell the Emperor, okay.
memory, vying for attention, demanding that their messages be remembered.
You often spoke of the Fenrisian notion of a good death,
said the Ravenguard.
If there is such a thing, I desire it. I should have taken it on Istvaan. Time and again, fate presented me with opportunity, but I denied it. Against Kurz and Lorgar. I could have ended their vileness. And Angron. How many has he butchered since I fled his axes? Rational, sensible decisions, weighing advantage and cost each time. But mistakes. All. The universe does not want us. It is unnatural that I survived.
He sighed, thinking of Marcus Valerius and the red sash he wore so proudly.
Visions. Visions sent by the Emperor? I think not. Something else guided those that rescued me. Another hand moved my warriors to intervene at Istvaan. Powers that we do not willingly serve still bend us to their will through the manipulation of others. I was not meant to survive Istvaan, and all that has befallen us is simply a correction of that failing course.
Corax paced.
Yeah, you can say that you were not meant to survive from Istvaan, but you're not entirely sure. You're not entirely sure, and don't trip over your decisions that way. What's done is done. What's done is done. Just keep moving forward. There's no point now of thinking about your past decisions and maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that. It's too late. Stop thinking about that stuff. try to think of a solution to these to the issues that the Imperium of Man is facing, instead of just drowning yourself in your melancholy. Yeah, no, he's really suffering from his melancholy then. Oh.
Slowly to the first cell door on the red level. He paused for a moment, repulsed, and driven on in equal measure. It had to be done. Inside, he found a creature crouched in the corner, its skin white beneath clumps of thick black fur, its eyes round, ebon discs that stared at him without any obvious intellect. Even so, he could not ignore the similarities, the pale flesh and the dark eyes. They had fought the war, and they had won. Now was the time to put right the assertion he had made to the sorcerer Natherkin on the forge world of Chonstax II.
I have made several oaths in my long life, but I have been careful to swear only those I could fulfill, except for one.
He told the beast. He crouched next to the pitiful thing, and it shuffled closer, comforted by his presence, though the sight of it broke the Primarch's heart.
One I now think may be beyond me. I looked into the face of our enemy, into the heart of the force that had corrupted them. I knew that, even if we killed Horus, that power could not be eradicated completely. Chaos will return with ever greater strength if we allow it. If we give it the vessels it seeks, and feed the ambitions that drive the weak to its embrace.
Corax recognized the adoration and trust that radiated from the deformed raptor. He laid one massive hand upon the former legionary's head, and the fingers of the other curled around his throat. The creature's mouth worked a few times, and drool dribbled over Corax's hand and fell to the floor in thick gobbets.
I remember everything. And I remember my exact words before I sent that fiend back into the warp vortex that had birthed it.
Tears stung the Primarch's eyes.
I promised him I would destroy every warp-spawned, chaos-tainted creature in the galaxy before I die.
The mewling, growling thing that had been Navar Hef met his gaze.
And I have always kept my promises, my son.
Oh, okay, so he's killing him? Okay.
Corax and the Legion fought back. On his metallic raven wings, he led his sons on a lightning campaign behind the traitors' lines. The worlds garrisoned by the traitor legions found danger in the shadows. Out of nowhere, Astartes in black armor, some with monstrous forms, cut them apart. Any chance of fleeing was met with a demigod figure that appeared from nowhere. Worlds were liberated, and by the time the traitors had learned of the assault, the Ravenguard were already at their next target. For years, Corax and the Legion fought in the shadows, but the cost of the heresy over time began to weigh heavy upon him. He learned more about the enemy, Chaos. He despised its corruption. He hated it. So when he learnt the truth about himself and his brothers, it cut deeper than any physical wound. The Primarchs were creations of science and the warp. Corax hated part of himself.
I thought he, and I just talked about this when he was saying, I'm going to kill every warp-tainted creature. I'm like, but my guy, you are part of it. You are part of it. I mean, you can see your father. He is the greatest psyker in the known universe. And he created you, the Primarchs. Now, you don't think that some of your brothers also have psyker abilities like Magnus the Red? Like, he's the most obvious of them all, And your ability to hide in the shadows, is that not also a psyker ability? So, when you said those words, were you really thinking, or were you just acting on pure passion? Corvus.
The surety of the Imperial truth that had guided him to raise worlds was a lie. Weak and weary, the Ravenlord pondered his place in the galaxy. As the fires of the heresy crescendoed, Corax found his brother, Leman Russ, and his space wolves under siege. They too had been decimated by the traitors over years. They too had sons that had been transformed by the influence of the warp. The Wolfen, to match Navar Hef's mutated Raptors. It was at the moment of
The Wolfen? So they're like werewolves? Wow, okay.
near defeat. A ghastly, grim Corax lamented to his comatose brother. He should have taken the death offered upon Istvaan. He had failed his people. He hadn't avenged the massacre. His naivety had cost lives. He was a creature of the warp. His desire for vengeance was almost consuming him. Though both the Ravenguard and the Space Wolf survived, the darkness never left Corax. News came from the Sol system. After 7 brutal years of conflict, the heresy was over. The Loyalists had won, but the Emperor was crippled and was interned upon the Golden Throne. Corax felt heavy, carrying the burdens of trauma and failure that not even his family could lift. Something that became worse as he had one more promise to fulfill. The second batch of Raptors, sons like Navar Hef, had been mutated by chaos, but they had fought side by side with their father and brothers throughout the heresy. They gave their blood, sweat and tears for Corax. They deserved more, but over time they were getting worse. They were devolving, locked away as they began to fall to frenzy and madness.
So that's why he killed them. He killed this. What does he call them? The Raptor. This Raptor, like in the jail cell, he strangled the life out of the Raptor till death. That's why he was killing them, because they were losing their minds. They were becoming like demons, essentially. Okay.
Over 1,000 of Corax's brave sons were in pain. With tears in his eyes, he kept the promise he had made to destroy every warp-spawned, chaos-tainted creature in the galaxy.
Oh, okay, so he changed the tune now. Now it's chaos tainted. Okay, alright.
Corax killed them, one by one, with his bare hands. The responsibility was his. The Ravenlord was a giant, a powerful demigod figure, but everyone has a limit. Corax locked himself in his personal chamber in the Ravenspire upon Deliverance, begging daily for his father's mercy. For an entire solar year, the Saviour of Deliverance locked himself away from his sons, none able to bring him out. As the Legion held breath for what felt like an eternity, Corax stepped out of his chamber a year to the day he entered. Something had changed. Perhaps the determination the people of Deliverance saw centuries ago had returned. Corax left the world alone, his midnight black eyes locked upon the warp storm, the Eye of Terror, and he gave his last words to the Imperium: nevermore. Forks of black lightning leapt from an outstretched hand, rippling through the body of a word-bearer, greasy smoke issuing from a rent in the warplate. The legionary collapsed.
"We have to fall back across the portal bridge,"
said Kaltar.
"We must fetch Lorgar."
Fetch Kaltar.
The voice came from behind them, as pure as molten gold in the dark apostle's soul. Its tones lifted his spirit in an instant, filling him with warmth. He turned, as did the others around him. The archway glowed with power. showing a vista of a gigantic citadel cathedral through the haze within its black frame. In front stood a gigantic figure, thrice the height of the legionaries, a golden-skinned entity wrapped in a cloak and robe of flame rune-shaped that swirled from its body. In one hand it wielded a wickedly spiked mace that throbbed with black power.
Wait, this image here, is this, Logar? Wow, in his demon form. Sheesh. Oh, okay.
The other bore a rod of intricately wound metal, tipped with a three-eyed skull, layered with golden sigils that constantly weaved about each other. Eyes of uniform azure burrowed into Kalta'ar.
I heard your woe, my son.
The voice washed through the dark apostle like a soothing balm, stilling his agitation, strengthening his resolve. Still, the presence of his Primarch was near overwhelming, and he fell to his knees, head bowed.
My Lord Aurelian, forgive my weaknesses. A creature of demonic spite has disrupted the great works here.
I see no demon.
Kalta'ar glanced back towards his brothers. The entity that had pursued them had reached the top of the hill amid a storm of bolter fire. It cast legionaries with sweeps of glittering claws, leaving tattered remains draped across the stonework of the outer shrine.
There is only one person who could do that. There's only one person. We all know who it is. And the fact that you guys cannot sense his presence or see him, yeah, there's only one person.
This is no demon.
Logar raised his rod, beckoning to the blood-stained whirlwind tearing through the lives of the Dark Apostle's warriors.
Come to me, brother.
With a last flurry of activity that turned another legionary to shards of ceramite and ribbons of flesh, the apparition coalesced into a recognizable figure. It was of equal height to the demon Primarch, clad in black battle plate with long taloned gauntlets. A pair of wings stretched out from its ornate backpack, fashioned as intricate metallic raven feathers. The face was as pale as snow, gaunt, the eyes as dark as coal, framed by a shoulder-length black hair. Kalta'ar felt his breath dying in his lungs as he looked upon the unmistakable features of Corvus Corax.
As the Amber King was describing Corvus, right, being extremely pale and his eyes, black. I'm just thinking about that movie called Prometheus and how the aliens, those giant spacefaring aliens, are kind of looking, they're fitting the description of how Corvus looks like. He's a giant, they're a giant, they both have, while Corvus has pale skin, they also have pale skin, they also have black eyes, just like Corvus here. So yeah, I'm just thinking about those, what do they call them? The engineers, I think, from Prometheus, that movie, based on the Alien vs Predator franchise. Yeah. Sorry guys, I'm digressing.
Primarch of the Ravenguard. A flurry of questions flooded his thoughts, but all remained unanswered as the Primarch spoke.
What has happened to you, brother?
I have ascended,
said Logar. He indicated Corax with a twitch of his rod.
I might ask the same of you.
The Ravenlord strode forwards, intent on Logar Aurelian. Kalta'ar and his warriors scattered before him, grateful to be free of his wrath. Marduk and his coterie closed about the Primarch, but a look sent them away.
I am what I always have been,
said Corax.
I am vengeance incarnate. I am justice delivered. This place beyond the veil has revealed what we all are. Underneath the veneer of humanity our Father crafted for us, we are of the warp.
Have you come to make an oath to the powers that are your true creator?
No. I swore to destroy all chaos taint from the galaxy. You will be the first fallen brother to die beneath my blades.
I am not the creature you fought at Istvaan,
said Lorgar, raising his mace.
Yeah, that's clearly obvious. I mean, look at you. Oh gosh.
Nor am I!
Kaltar barely followed the lunge of Corax, so swift it was. A black wind threw him aside as dark fire crackled from the rod of Lorgar, with a thunderous shockwave that hurled the Word-bearers to the ground. The two demigods clashed. The Ravenlord pondered, weak and weary, but never more. The boy from Deliverance, who had been embraced by an oppressed people who filled him with an innate sense of justice, to a young man who learnt to master stealth in the shadows of a prison, promising to free the people who loved him. The young man had friends and family, but he always felt different. He was the savior. He was surrounded, but alone, until a figure wreathed in golden light descended from the sky. His father, the Emperor. He completed him, and he gave him all he needed to fill the hole in his heart. The man became a Primarch to the Imperium of Man, trained by the best of the Imperium, believing with every fibre of his being in the Imperial truth. He took his people to the stars, and they fought the worst the galaxy had to offer. But Corax's human weaknesses slipped through. The resentment of the people who had suffered was reflected within him. He despised opulence. His need for justice skirted along the edge of vengeance. It was an anger that would bubble to the surface in his worst moment, always fearful of becoming like his brother Curse. He was honourable, kind and fair, and was filled with purpose, until he lost nearly all of his sons upon the field of Istvaan. His spirit was damaged. A melancholy gripped him, dragging him down to that sunken place. But he kept moving forward. He found a way to rebuild his legion, a way to rebuild himself, and erase his feelings of guilt for surviving. But this hope was taken from him when his sons were corrupted, and the Legion's future could not bring him atonement for his failures. But his sons were there for him. They fought the betrayers with the last of their strength for years, as the fires of the heresy raged on. But then he learnt the truth, that his foundation upon which he had condemned worlds, the Imperial truth, was a lie. Demons were real, and a part of him was of the warp. He'd already hated his own failures as a man, but now he hated his very being. As the heresy drew to its close, his father was gone, forever locked upon his golden throne, just when he was most in need of guidance. Then his Raptors, his mutated sons, who had fought throughout the heresy despite their corruption, began to devolve. So he put over 1,000 of his sons out of their pain, bearing the responsibility of another failure. His limit had been reached. The darkness had overcome him, and he lay in that mind fog, wallowing in the despair caused by centuries of pain and suffering. But something changed. A universal truth found him. The truth that is inside all of us is the capacity for change. He let the fear go. He embraced what he was. He was a creature of the war. I am vengeance incarnate. I am justice delivered. He could be the vengeance of the Imperium. He could be the justice that the traitors so richly deserved. Here lies the Ravenlord, hunting down his treacherous brothers as a shadow in the war. A creature of justice, leaping from the darkness. Never more would he suffer treachery. Never more would he fail anyone. Nevermore would he fail himself. Nevermore would he let justice go undelivered. Nevermore.
Okay. But where is he? I mean, is he still fighting in the warp? Or is he dead? Or what happened? I mean, it's all nice and good to say that he's chasing after his brothers. He's gonna, try and get revenge on them and everything. But what does this mean in the end of it all? Is he still alive? Is he still lost in the warp? Or is he dead? And when the Imperium of Man needs Primarchs at its worst moment, like right now, in terms of what's going on in the 41st millennium. Well, at least Roberto Guilliman is back, right? But then, before he returned to the Imperium of Man has been on autopilot for a very, very long time, for almost 10,000 years, on autopilot, being led by people on Terra, and they're not really doing a good job. And that's when the Imperium of Man needs Primarchs like him. You need to come back. Stop playing around in the warp. You can't really kill your brothers, I think. I don't think they'll ever die. They'll always come back. So you need to get out of that place and come back and help Roberto Guilliman managing the Imperium of Man. Yeah.
Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black bloom as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
Yeah. Okay. I'll have to watch this a second time or a third time. Thank you. And I'm sorry. He's not playing the soundtrack this time. It's okay. It's okay. Okay, guys, that's it with understanding Corvus Corax 40k lore, Ravenguard featuring the Warhammer community by the Amber King. Yeah, Corvus. You know, where Corvus is always stuck in his melancholy or, second guessing himself about the decisions he's made, in the most critical of moments, and he debilitates himself in his melancholy, right? People like Conrad Kurz, once they've made their decision, they stick by their decision no matter what. Even if it's a bad decision, they stick by it and they try to justify it with so much vigor and strength behind their conviction, But then when it comes to Corvus, he is so wrecked by his own decisions. He blames himself for making this particular decision at that moment. And I think that's one difference between these two brothers, that is so prevalent, if I can say that. One sticks by his decisions no matter what. The other, after making that decision, he starts to second guess himself, and he just descends into melancholy. So that's quite interesting between the two brothers. And yeah, like they both had unique starts. Conrad Kurz and Corvus, they both crash landed on planets that were terrible, had terrible conditions. Although one had a loving family, the other one, was devouring people left, right, and center. So yeah, it's interesting how they have similarities in some cases, but then it just diverts, totally diverts later on in their lives, if I can say that. Yeah. So yeah, Corvus Corax was a good Primarch, to a certain degree. He was a very good Primarch, not only to his legion, but also a leader of his people on his planet of Deliverance. Only Deliverance, not the planet of, what is it called again? Kieva? Yeah, not to the people of Kieva, really. He should have stayed in on his home planet and tried to create reconciliation between the moon and the planet, and the people on both of these celestial bodies. He should have tried to stay at home, try to create a unity project, for his people, so that generations in the future they can be a united people. The pain and suffering of the past can be healed, so that when Corvus returns home, he doesn't have to be wrecked by civil war like how he was when the Alpha Legion instigated a civil war on the planet and the moon, with the people of Kieva coming and fighting against the Primarch and the people of Deliverance. If he had dealt with this situation before, then probably he wouldn't be facing that issue with the Alpha Legion infiltrating his fortress and destroying the gene seed bank, So yeah, he left his homeworld exposed to the corruption and the destruction of its society by outside forces like the Alpha Legion. So yeah, like I said before, he was a good Primarch, very loyal to the Emperor, but I'm still wondering, where is he right now? Is he dead, or is he still alive? And if he is still alive, is he in the warp? Is he fighting still against his brothers? Is he winning? I don't know. These are the questions that just rack my mind, because honestly, 10,000 years. It's been 10,000 years. And this guy is still in the warp, fighting against his brothers, leaving the Imperium of Man behind, and chasing after vengeance. Yeah. Okay, that is something that I find as an issue right there. It's an issue. And yeah, I like the fact that he had his family members with him, just like Euphraia, is that her name? Euphraia? Yeah, Euphraia. That old lady who's been with him for a very, very long time. I don't know if she's still with him, even when he journeyed into the warp. I'm not sure about that. But it's good to see that, he had people around him who have been with him since day one. That was a very nice and very sweet thing. That's a part of his life, I don't know how many other Primarchs can actually say they still have their family that they've had since they crash landed on their homeworlds. I know that Robuto Guilliman still had his mother on his planet of Macragge. Rogel Dawn, I think he also still had his human family members still alive. So yeah, those are the only other two people who I know that still had, their human family members. And now Corvus is also part of that group of people who still had human families. Everybody else I'm not sure about. All the other Primarchs I'm not sure about. But yeah, that was a very nice thing to hear about Corvus. And yeah, guys, and what happened on Istvaan 5 was really terrible. Really, really terrible. And he made a choice. You know, he had a decision to make, whether to keep on fighting against his brothers or retreat and save his legion. And he chose to save his legion. It's not a bad choice. It's not a bad choice. Also, fighting against your brothers until your death is also not a bad choice. But you made the choice, accept the choice, and live with it and move on. You know, that's what he should have done. He should have moved on from it. But he just couldn't. He just couldn't. He was trapped in that melancholy. He was trapped in that guilt and regret for choosing the decision to retreat and to help out what's ever left of his legion to survive, you know. But yeah, I still think that it was a good choice for him to retreat, save your legion, and get off that planet as soon as possible, you know. So yeah, Corvus might think that he was a coward for doing that, but I say that, you know, you retreat to fight another day. And here he is now. He's in the warp. He's fighting against his brothers there. So yeah, I'm sure he'll be happy for that. But guys, yeah, this was good. This was really good by the Amber King. Thank you guys for sticking with me. If you did, like, for the past, what is it, like 2 hours now. I really did enjoy this. If you liked the video, remember to give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as the Amber King's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. And until next time, bye bye.